Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Shed Organics Show. My name is Jordan, and today we have another cracking episode with a very special guest. Today we have Simon from Save the Bees Australia, and Simon is a person that I've come across in the last year or two who is really embodying what it is to be an advocate for the things that we care about and the things that matter. And Simon is not afraid to speak his mind. Simon's not afraid to talk about these issues publicly. And I really admire the way that he dives into all of these topics and shares all sides of them to the people. You don't necessarily have to agree with everything everybody says out in the world who says this, that, and the other, but having these conversations, opening up the discourse to be able to chat backwards and forwards honestly and openly is so, so important in today's environment. So please enjoy the conversation with Simon. There are so many things that we touch on, including honey and how to recognize good honey, the consistency of honey, where it comes from, also the discrepancies in labeling that we need to look out for. So stay tuned. If you love bees, if you love honey, and if you are very passionate about important issues, this episode is for you. So without further ado, this is Simon from Save the Bees Australia. Too often these days, we're seeing products on the shelves that aren't exactly what they claim to be on the tin, for example, in regards to honey. Now, it's fairly known around the place or in the space of regenerative and organic and all of this that we're aiming to go for a raw, basically untreated honey as local as possible to you. Is there anything that you can talk to me about honey, what to look out for, what consumers can be going to, and how we can tell which honey is the best one for us?
Yeah, it's getting more difficult over the years. I've been into honey for a decade, and particularly when I first started, I realized how medicinal it was. I really helped a friend with an infection from my own hive, and it changed her life, the benefit of that honey I'd given her. And then for me, at that awakening type process of my beekeeping, realizing that the stuff at the supermarket just didn't have the consistency of the raw honeys that I was finding in my hives and other hives. Like, for instance, this supermarket stuff doesn't crystallize at all. So that's a good take on it.
Right.
Obviously, over 10 years, I've evolved a bit to, um, see how better systems could come about. And over that time, I created a honey map, and you can go on and you put your postcode in, and they'll give you five of your closest beekeepers,
Oh,
and
wow.
then you can buy honey off them directly. I think a lot of people use Facebook Marketplace. Um, and then how can you, it's very frustrating for Australians who are working their guts out as beekeepers that they have to compete with the stuff that might not be honey at all.
Hmm.
So for a consumer, one way now I'm deciphering between quality product and not quality product is whether it's got antibiotics in the honey. And for people out there, they'd be just shocked to know that Australian beekeepers, a lot of the commercial ones, rather than check their hives for health, they'll go and mass dose them with antibiotics.
Mm.
And then the bees will stay alive, but it hides the symptoms. So in the last month, I've written to every single honey packer in Australia, and there's only two that will give 100% guarantee that they've got no antibiotics in their honey.
Wow.
And so that's pretty important for people to realise
Mm.
if they're watching this, is that there's a honey packer and beekeeper in Queensland called Hampson Honey. Carl, he gives me a guarantee that there's no antibiotics. So that's one way. If you're at the supermarket, unfortunately or fortunately, I can only refer that one at the moment.
Hmm.
But I've just thought, rather than there's so many people make these claims like raw and unfiltered and local. when they're none of those things.
Hmm.
And like, so how do we weed it out? Now we can weed out the quality from the inequality if you say it's antibiotic free. The other thing that Australia does that Europe and America aren't doing at the moment, they're allowing honey in from Argentina and China, and it's well known that in Argentina and China they use a lot of antibiotics as well.
Hmm.
And obviously, if your listeners would be thinking, well, why are we even bringing honey in from China and Argentina? And this is one of those shocking things that has evolved as the human race. You get people carrying on about climate change, but they're still buying honey that's been imported and gone, the food miles on that honey. So
Mm.
it's ridiculous. But one thing you said, like it's always better to get, honey direct and local to you, which
Hmm.
isn't always possible. Some people live in broad acre farming areas, some
Hmm.
people live in the city. And what I think is marvelous is like being able to choose a honey that you really love. Like at the moment, I've been promoting leatherwood honey a lot.
Yeah.
And if you've never tasted leatherwood honey, it is like people carry on about Manuka, but Manuka isn't a nice tasting honey. It's sort of a medicinal honey and best used topically or if you've got an infection. But leatherwood honey is a taste you'll never forget. But at the same time, you couldn't eat leatherwood every day. It's sort of like eating lobster or
Right.
scallops where it's rich and
Yeah.
and then so you've got your eucalyptus honeys like blue gum and yellow box and they're just everyday honeys. They're great and they're probably better for you to digest than a lot of the other honeys as well.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you for sharing that because it is important. It is hard for people to distinguish or at least understand that what's written on the label is not always what we're told it is. I've found this with organic products as well. A lot of people can use the word organics. Obviously I've got that in part of the name of what I do, but it's very difficult to see because
Well,
it
it's
says,
it, it's it's scary for me. Like
oh,
I've had a constant battle with this company here,
yes.
and I'm not going to say anything about them specifically. I'll let the consumer make up their own mind. But it says Australian certified organic on the front,
Hmm.
Capilano organic on the front, and then on the back it says in times of shortage we may use international honey until Australian honey is available again. So
Yeah.
you
Well,
know, like this is the problem, and so I have got a certification, and my certification is Save the Bees Australia certified, antibiotic free, because as we spoke about before, I just see that as being
mm.
you've got antibiotics in your honey, obviously, it's not as pure as you want it to be.
Well, it's anti to bio. It's anti-life in a lot of ways. It's killing off so many of these different things. And having that blanket approach that we see, unfortunately, so often in so many areas of our food and our, environmental kind of use, like these people just, I was talking to Jesse recently about the fire ants and how that program is just a crazy blanket, just spraying of all of these things. And it's just, we're not thinking about the wholeness, the completeness of the product or how that interacts and those chemicals and things interact with our bodies once they come into us as well. Um, I wanted to touch on Manuka because you just spoke about it. Manuka is I've heard often utilized as a bit of a name to sell things as well. How do we tell what pure Manuka is and some of these honeys where they can kind of claim the health benefits and sell you this much more expensive jar when it's not necessarily that true Manuka? Can you speak to that at all?
Oh yeah, it's one of the most passed up products in the world. I think something like the UK sell more Manuka honey in a month than it's produced in the world a year. So it's very easy to pass off honey as another honey. And then if you go to the supermarket, it's so confusing because you'll see like a $6 jar of Manuka and then you'll see $100 jar of Manuka, and you're like, well, what do these numbers even mean?
Yeah.
And so I even find the numbers confusing because the system in New Zealand's different to the system in Australia. And then there was a massive court case it probably finished about 5 years ago, where New Zealand were trying to stop Australia from using the word Manuka.
Mm,
And Australia actually won the court case. And obviously, it's the plant, not the area, that's of importance.
correct. Yeah.
And so Australia has the highest quality Manuka honey in the world. And
Okay.
I don't know if your listeners, I would go to Google Medi Jelly, and there's a beekeeper called Peter, and he owns that company. And his whole idea when he set it up was knowing that these scams were going on, that he could sell Manuka direct to the consumer. And so yeah, medijelly.com for your Manuka.
Perfect.
But yeah, on saying that, a lot of beekeepers will just cordial up their Manuka. New Zealand actually became strict recently on because they're trying to protect their industry. So
Hmm.
I think it's happening a bit less there, but
That's
now
good.
all the honey's been coming to Australia and being sold as Manuka. So don't buy New Zealand Manuka honey either if you're in Australia, because it's the stuff that they're rejecting,
Yeah.
that is
Okay.
getting flooding into our market.
Yeah, interesting. Well, yeah, because I originally lived in New Zealand, and it was always spoken about that Manuka was, this New Zealand gold mine of honey. It's really interesting for me to know that it's actually a lot better here and a lot better
Well, the
quality.
problem, like another weird thing that's happening in New Zealand, is they're finding a lot of glyphosate in the New Zealand Manuka honey, and
In the honey.
in the honey. And so a lot of,
Wow.
like, you can Google this, but a lot of New Zealand Manuka is getting rejected from Japan.
Hmm.
So as the quality of testing's increasing and we can find things like different pesticides within honey a lot easier, a lot of those honeys are getting rejected. And Australia's honey was all tested and got through, but New Zealand's honey's been getting sent back.
Mm.
And this is, allegedly. Allegedly, in New Zealand, they use helicopters to spray Roundup over a lot of these tea tree or leptospermum plants to knock them back, because if they knock them back the next year, they can produce higher yields of flowers. That is what someone's told me, and whether that's
Wow.
true or not, I don't know. But for whatever reason, New Zealand has huge issues with glyphosate. And then someone actually said, well, it might be the clover and other things that they're blending the Manuka with that cause that issue. But you're running an organic program, so that is one chemical that we're all trying to avoid.
Oh,
And to be
certainly.
getting it in your honey, it's particularly a really expensive Manuka honey, is really disappointing. And so New Zealand have to do something to stop that.
Yeah, you're right, mate. The glyphosate is one of these things that we're just all seeming to kind of run into at the moment, and it's becoming, thankfully, more widely known how debilitating it is for life in general. But let's talk about local honey again. So, say, for example, like the honey that I get from my wonderful local butcher, who has this beautiful honey there, and it's regularly slightly different color, obviously, because it depends on what what the bees are pollinating, what flowers they're going around to, what trees and different things. They don't necessarily have anything that says this is a specific tree, it's just this at the moment, or it's just that. They sometimes have different kind of flavors where they'll say this comes from a certain tree or a certain plant or whatever it is. But for the most part, I can see a little bit of color differences and things like that. Um, a couple of questions to go with that local honey. One, what should I be asking the honey producer themselves about their process? Obviously, you mentioned antibiotics, and then maybe something to do with treatment in terms of how they get their honey to from A to B. But then also, what are the differences in the coloration and the style of honey? Because I've just come back from the UK and I've seen a lot of milky honeys over there that are quite popular. So what's the differences in all the colors that we're seeing?
All right, yeah, I'll go
And
into
we'll
that.
go
So
with some of those things.
in the UK, it's normal to eat crystallized honey.
Mm.
And I should bring a few jars over. I'm staring at a few jars and show you how different they are. Do you mind if I just
Yeah,
run?
please. Yep. Yeah, grab some.
Yeah, so sorry about that.
No, it's all good.
So, I'm back. So this is honey I got out of my hives 2 days ago. It's really sort of a brown color. This is
Mm.
probably more likely got manuka in it, a tight leptospermum, and it's sort of jelly-like in consistency. And then this is what I will get out of the hive later in the season in February. It's a plant
Wow.
called Muna. So, that's a big contrast, isn't it?
Yeah, huge contrast. It's like
And
yellow for those listening. The second one is yellow, so it's sort of more gold in the first one and brown, and the second one's more sort of
yeah,
goldy yellow.
and yeah, obviously bees are getting a variety of nutrition sometimes as well. So, but most likely than not, there's some type of honey flow that will give a distinction. But you said like milky honey, but
Hmm.
we call it creamed honey. And
Creamed, yes.
creamed honey, that is just whipping the honey basically.
Okay.
And if you buy a creamy, I feel like you might leave it on for 24 hours stirring, and then it's fluffy forever. Whereas
Wow.
sometimes, like this one looks quite creamed as well, but I never cream this. But sometimes it's rock hard.
Hmm.
Um, so you obviously know honey lasts forever. So it's sort of magical the way the bees have this system where they can do that. Like mathematically, it's actually really hard for us to get honey to a point where we can get exactly the right amount of moisture out and then let it last forever. But bees do that
That's
automatically.
incredible.
So it
Wow.
is it is incredible. And then so in terms of what to ask your beekeepers or how they could stuff up, and if it's a backyard beekeeper, you might ask something like, "What do you use in the smoker?"
Hmm.
If people are using cardboard or newspaper, obviously those chemicals will be going in, so that's not good and it won't taste as well. I,
Hmm.
I tend to use pine needles, or sometimes I'll use rosemary or even lavender that I've dried out.
Yeah, okay.
Um,
Does that then give the honey a hint of that taste sometimes?
Sometimes, depending if you're getting the honey from the frames, or it could be burr comb that you get on, spare comb that's grown on top where the lid goes, or something that might have a bit more of a smoky taste in it.
Yeah, okay.
Um, so you're not always going to detect the smoke, but it's you can probably tell the style of beekeeper if they're thinking about those things. They're
Mm.
more likely to have a cleaner product. The other thing you'd ask your beekeeper if they've done pollination work, because if they've gone to the blueberries or the almonds, those bees might have been subjected to pesticides.
Hmm.
And then if you're in an area of New South Wales and Queensland where varroa is coming through, you'd say, has your honey got miticides in it? And
Mm.
then miticides are sort of, there's organic ones and there's non-organic ones. So if they said something like oxalic acid, you probably go, oh, that's okay, that's organic. You find it in honey anyway.
Yeah.
But if it's one of those other Bayer style chemicals, like amatraz or something, maybe you would avoid that honey.
Hmm.
So, yeah, there are a few of the questions you could ask. The other
Okay.
thing is sometimes beekeepers will harvest before it's ripened or capped off,
Hmm.
and that means that honey will go off.
Right. So it's not been gone through that full process where it can last forever. So they
We'll
haven't.
see in China quite often they'll harvest the unripened honey, and like technically it shouldn't be cold honey if it hasn't been ripened.
Mm.
And they've worked out over there that not only do they get more, but the bees will work harder to keep on bringing it in. And
Right.
then they have a different process to stop it going off, but it also means that it'll stay liquid in the jar for longer.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, okay. Well, wow. There's so many things there that I wouldn't have even thought to ask. So thank you.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, like this is how hard it is for people trying to do the right thing. Like, I obviously do, and a lot of the people who would be on the honey map do, but there is an organisation called ARBIC that is meant to be looking after beekeepers in Australia. It's
Okay.
called the Australian Honey Board Industry Council. Beekeepers who pay for them paid a fortune for them to go out and test the supermarkets honeys and all honeys from Australia. The adulteration they found was so extreme that ARBIC have decided that they it could tank the whole Australian market, so they're not going to release that information to the
Oh,
public. A Channel 7 journalist rang me recently. I asked that Channel 7 journalist, to get that information from ARBIC, and they said no, we've passed it on to the Governor General or something, and he'll decide whether the public ever see it or not. So I'm in this situation where do I try to get freedom of information and try to work out what was in that testing? But for me, it is like it's it's an unfair playing field. They can sell adulterated stuff at the supermarket, but I would never morally do that to my consumers. But I'm also having to compete in that market.
That's such a shame. It makes when you see something like that where it's so bad that they think that look, we've got to think about the money first and foremost over the health of everybody in the consumers. It's a shame. It might be worth trying to figure out if we can use the power of the people and independently start testing these things like you're doing, and you're showcasing all of the things for people to look out for. I'd highly encourage all the listeners to go and check out your content and go back through it because you're
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I spent a lot of time doing that, and like now I'm doing taste testing. I
yeah.
can I bet I'm nearly at a stage where my word's enough. I'm like, buy this one, don't buy that one, and I think that's the stage I want to get it to where with honeys, just see if it's certified or ask those questions, and just don't buy that supermarket stuff.
Yeah, and I think you really are becoming a little bit of a figurehead for that because you are so honest and open about these things and just sharing exactly what consumers want to know. Myself included, I'm fascinated by honey. I love honey. I have honey regularly, but I don't ha necessarily have the time to go and check all of these things in every aspect of my life. So, which we're having to do, unfortunately, with so many products and so many different things. What's just sort of moving personally, mate, what's it like for you as somebody who, you've built this sort of organization around saving the bees and you're really advocating for doing things the right way. What's it like for you when you are coming up against the reality of the situation, let's call it? How do you feel challenged in bringing the message out there, personally?
Yeah, it's. I guess I've succumbed to the fact that the enemy's a big, got a lot of money. I could think that's one of the things for me to make day-to-day decisions. I just have to say, well, what's better for bees?
Yeah.
And so that's makes it like for something like the fire ant poisoning program. Like I was really hoping that another organisation or other people would take that on.
Hmm.
And so I went to the Senate inquiry. They at that point I didn't even know what they were planning. And then as I started to learn what they were planning, I was gobsmacked. Like you never prophylactically poison things, and that's basically what it is. It's like we don't know whether there's fire ants here or not, but we'll just go poison the whole lot, and that's going to kill indigenous bees. When I spoke to I tried to do things the right way first. I had a
Mm.
meeting with the Invasive Species Council, who are really the lobby group to get this poisoning done, and they didn't even know that we had indigenous bees in Australia. The first thing the guy said to me is like, we're actually happy varroas here because that means that we're going to have the honeybees wiped out, and we don't like honeybees because they're introduced. And I said, well, what about the native bees? I said, native bees. I go, but they live where the ants live. They live underground.
Yeah.
I said, underground living bees in Australia? Like, yeah, there's 2,000 varieties. I said, have you even done an environmental impact study to where these bees? So the potential is they're wiping out bees that are vulnerable, or we may never even discover before we have the chance to discover them. That's how hardcore it is.
Mm.
Um, so with that one, it's just a really rational debate, and to see them, and we have seen this before with I don't like bringing up the vaccine COVID stuff, but they really hadn't done the research and bullied people into accepting it. And now
Mm.
they're breaking into properties and forcing poison on private properties with no fire ants.
Mm.
So it
Yeah.
actually feels surreal that we're in a time where what I'm saying is considered outrageous.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
one thing that happened, and I don't even know if you're privy to, the interview, but an ABC journalist rang me a while ago, and I videoed him interviewing me, and it was like he was trying to get me the whole time,
Mm,
and it was just really great that I had, my son's phone at the time to video myself, because even though I released it just on Instagram, went for 41 minutes or something, it actually went semi-viral.
mm,
And and within doing that interview, another company I could tell, had got to ABC and was working with them on the questions to try to make me say things that could get me into trouble under a gag order.
hmm.
And so it was a fascinating discussion because I was able to rationally talk it out with this journalist, and he looked like a fool. Like
Yeah.
he said something like, "Well, they're not poison, Simon, that they're using. The eradication program says they're not poison." I go, "Do you know what the chemicals are? Do you want to just Google them while I'm here
Yeah.
talking to you and read what they said? They're literally poisons. They've got cautions. One of the things is keep them away from bees."
Yeah.
And one of the things is never use in rainwater. Another one of the when it's raining, and then one of them is only ever used on fire ant nests when
Yeah,
they
not
spotted the
towards rain.
nest.
Mm.
So it was like their own literature from science is saying what they're doing is completely, irresponsible or wrong, and if a private company did it, they'd be, sued
Yeah.
us a fortune.
Mm.
So yeah, so in terms of when I get sort of threats from corporations, or in this case, the ABC have been attacking me recently, I think that it shows I'm on the right track,
Yeah.
and I'm affecting the profits. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I guess that's been a real shock for me that the
Mm.
our government channel has been used in a way to promote, honey corporations, the big ones, and um, also this poisoning program that's obviously making some people a fortune.
It is. Mate, I'm in total agreement with you in so many ways. You know, I saw firsthand or felt firsthand the impact of the pressure, say, from the vaccines and things like this. Unfortunately, lost all my work at the time for choosing my own personal sovereignty. But you know, it's merely just watching the government who is supposedly working for the people, which we often forget, do things without that public consultation, and then when we've got people who are boots on the ground, like yourself, who are able to give real world examples, we've got real people sharing their stories of the impacts that these things are making. I don't feel like we're necessarily being listened to. And I highly commend you for going down the routes of trying to chat to the right channels, chat to the right people. It's very proactive. It's very admirable, something that I personally struggle with, even just to fathom having to go up and stand there and argue a case. I try and, do my bit by having conversations like this. But hey guys, really quickly, jumping in, I just want to remind you, if you are not subscribed to this show, that is the number one thing that you can do to show me your support. So if you're finding value from this conversation and you're deeply engaged, I would love you to hit the follow or subscribe button. All right, back to the show. I see people like, I'm not sure if you're aware of Clancy Lester, the bee man from talking about native bees.
Yeah, can we talk about Clancy for a
Of course,
second?
yeah, of course.
Like, I've been writing to him for months. Like, I've been very friendly to him and back and forth. But he hasn't spoken out about the fire ant poisoning program. He hasn't spoken, and you talk about they find these young people and they sponsor them, and
Mm,
then these people become gagged.
yeah,
And Clancy, if
yeah,
he's listening, has to get some balls, because I'm starting to get pissed off. I've got a petition. I wrote to him recently about neonicotinoids. They're banned in Europe. They're the most used insecticide in the world. They're absolutely decimating Australian insects. It's got 50,000 signatures. I said, "Cool, Clancy, you take this one over. This one can go to you. I've
yep.
done the work. I'm running one on honey labeling. It's got 300,000 signatures. I'm trying to help Jesse. I try to empower people at the same time. And
Definitely.
Clancy was one of those guys I want to empower. Now, someone's
Hmm.
tapped him on the shoulder and said, "All right, Save the Bees is too hardcore for us. Be careful. Don't collaborate with Save the Bees."
Right.
And so yeah, I'm going to be pushing back Clancy, and I think he knows it. And I think you would have seen earlier in this year. I had a phone call from a friend saying that Costa, the gardener,
Was gags, yeah.
was very impressed with the work we were doing,
Mm.
and that he wasn't allowed to talk out about the poisoning program he was disgraced with. It
Yeah.
was interesting because ABC did a complaint to Instagram and Facebook about other articles I'd written about Gardening Australia, their show who promoted it. But I noticed that they've left that Costa one up there. So, I was pretty friendly about him, and he's a hard guy not to like.
Mm.
But I just think in these crucial times when we're talking about creatures becoming extinct or the quality of our life dropping, you've got to be courageous and speak up on
Yes.
these issues.
Yes, mate.
If you're going to be a custodian for bees, which both of them claim to be.
Yeah, look, I share your sentiment. I don't know personally about any sort of conversations, and I'm slightly reluctant to talk about certain people, but I like, for example, with bringing up Clancy, the reason I was talking about him is because we're seeing people like him come on and go into the government space and the ABC space, which he's just, from what I understand, from what he told me, is going in and hopefully working, like he said, for the ABC Creators Program. But that then means that you are bound by what the ABC wishes you to speak about or doesn't wish you to speak about. And I feel like that's the same with someone like Costa, where your whole livelihood and your whole life, paying your bills, paying your rent, and things like this, is bound by a certain body or corporation. This goes for anything, not just necessarily the ABC. You're always going to be sorry, you're going to be reluctant to be speaking out against the people that pay you. And unfortunately, that's the trap that they've got a lot of people in. Um, Going through the main routes of actually taking things into Parliament, I think there is certainly a way of being able to bring the facts to these things in a way that's not combative, and that is actually, we're allowed to talk about these things without having that backlash. Um, I I really hope that, if Clancy does listen to this, he has been a guest on the show talking about the importance of native bees. But if he is somebody that is making huge waves in terms of being able to get into government situations and say things, I think that platform is crucial to be able to speak about the things that you're sharing here. So,
Like it's not controversial to just read the poisons they're using the fire ant program,
mm,
saying, yeah, these poisons do kill native bees. Yes, I'm a native bee expert. Yeah,
yeah, it's not controversial. It
it's not
shouldn't be
controversial,
controversial.
and it's controversial that you got a person with that standing that isn't talking about the poisons. And like
Mm,
I'm all for like insect hotels and things, but I was talking to a friend about it the other day. It's sort of like greenwashing for bees, really. Like if you really want to help native bees, you actually have to, you know, one thing that damages them is when we pick up all the old, logs and dead logs for bushfire clearing and stuff.
mm,
That's one thing because they live underground and they should be living naturally of messy gardens and debris. So the insect hotel thing, it's a bit of a novelty.
right.
Great way of showing kids here's where bees live, and you can have that instead of a traditional beehive. But to
Mm,
think it's going to make a difference when we've got massive poisoning programs, it's just like very, very insignificant in
yeah.
relation to speaking out about neonicotinoids and the other poisons like fipronil, S-methoprene, and pyridoxafen that they're using in the fire ant poisoning program.
Yeah, you're right. I think as you said, there is a place for these things like bee hotels, sharing with the kids and inspiring them to get into finding out more about this. But when it comes to using your platform to do good, I think the talking about these issues is just so important. That's why I really wanted to get you on the show to really sort of highlight a few of these, but also just going back to that personally, how does it weigh on, like, how do you find every week? Because personally, when I'm out there and I'm seeing all of these things happening, it does get a bit overwhelming. It does seem to get like I'm daily going into battle against these things. Um, how do you rationalize that back down to yourself in your everyday life? And, for me, my motto is one person at a time. So I'm sort of just trying to be one situation, one day at a time, just spreading the word, trying to talk, finding the truth, trying to open conversations. And that sort of leaves me thinking that, I'm on the right path, trying to say the right thing. How do you rationalize that to keep yourself sane and happy and enjoying your life whilst facing these big battles?
I know if I don't speak up and I haven't tried, then it's going to be a lot worse for me.
Yeah.
That's one way of explaining it. But sometimes people might think, like, why are you dipping your toes into that issue at a certain time? Because sometimes I can't help myself but to
Yeah.
jump into a situation. But I used to volunteer for Clean Ocean organisation. I still do. And it's been an interesting journey. I see other sort of environmental ocean groups that are they're so blinded by this broad term climate change that
Yeah.
they're not taking into account pesticides, fertilizers, and ocean runoff.
Hmm.
And then for my lifetime, what's happening in South Australia is worse than any environmental disaster I've seen in Australia. And I can see this. Albanese went there recently and he said, well, we've got to expect more than this because of climate change. When I first took on that topic on a podcast, it sort of went semi-viral, and a lot of people started writing to me about the desalination plants
Mm.
and how these harmful algae blooms, they call them HABs, are found quite often where desalination plants are around the world, like in Israel,
Mm.
Saudi Arabia, Florida have all had issues with mass fish die-offs when they've turned them on. And
Yeah.
so
Okay.
South Australia has just recently turned a lot of them on. Like initially, I was blaming the Murray River and pesticides coming and fertilizers. Like I can change my opinion.
Yeah, of
But
course.
what's very scary is now I've gone deep down this rabbit hole in researching where a desalination plant's coming up around Australia, a coastline, and it is just massively, massively worrying because there's a huge one in Perth, there's another one coming in Victoria, and then you've got this other issue as well with data banks also needing salt water to run and a desalination plant there. So I don't want these red tide events or these algae blooms to start happening everywhere.
Mm.
But if they do, it's not because of climate change, it's because of ocean pollution. And
Yeah.
so, how can I let the narrative get taken over when I know it's false? And I see the same thing with bees. They're like, oh, bees are collapsing because of climate change. No, it's not. It's pesticide use mainly, and land clearing is not good. But if we get distracted by this one term, we can't focus on the real perpetrators or problems. So
Mm.
yeah, anyway, it's easy when you can't listen to the bullshit. You just like you've got to talk about what you know is real. But I've copped some flack. Like I'm a volunteer, so they can't take my wage away. But there's a few posts that have gone viral when me talking about the desalination issues and the algae bloom, and Clean Ocean, who I volunteered for, have told me to take down the posts, or they've
Mm.
taken it down off their own page. And I know for a fact one person, like I had a fight with a senator in Tasmania, a Green senator, he's Senator Surfer, he calls himself, and he signed off on the fire ant program. He said, well, no one's written me any letters saying that there had any negative environmental impacts. And I'm saying, but I have myself. I
Yeah.
forwarded them to you. And he goes, oh, they haven't been sent to me. And then like Jessie, she might have
Yeah.
told you, she did the
She
same
did.
thing. She's had thousands of letters
Yeah.
go. And so, you hear that politicians lie. and then I'm on the front line. I'm catching them out lying for myself. I'm fortunate I've got quite a few followers, so I follow up, and
Mm.
then people ringing me going, "You can't give the senator shit." I'm going, I'll give whoever I
Yeah.
want shit, and yeah, let's see how it goes. Censorship's probably been one of the biggest issues I've suffered, and I don't know if Jesse told you that we were collaborating a lot, but now we're not allowed to. Then my collaboration feature got taken off for about the last month,
All
but
right.
now it just returned. So
Mm.
I'm sort of trying to get back on track again with that. But I've just, as as I said earlier, I try to empower other people, so then
Mm.
the burden's not wholly on me. So Jesse's been amazing, and there's another girl, Estelle's been really good, and another girl that does beekeeping with me at the moment, Emily, she's spoken up about Capilano last week. I can't
Beautiful.
really talk about them because I'm restricted. So what we do need, we need, and look, I'm only guessing your age, but are you in your 30s or
I'm 33 next week, mate.
yeah. So yeah, I'm 50 now, so we need younger people, and that's why sort of it's been a bit disappointing with Clancy because he's on that younger age group, and I don't know why he's gagged himself in regards to mentioning all these specific poisons.
Yeah, look, part of my thought process on a lot of these things is opening conversation means that it's not necessarily like we don't have to go with whoever's voice and say this person's right, this person's right. It's the more discourse we have, the more opening up and saying, hey, like you just said, what is actually this chemical? What is it doing? Is it the Murray River? Is it the desalination plants? Then we look into it and we figure out the best path forward. It's not as
Exactly.
if,
And this is what I've said. I've said if there's people that don't agree on the comments and there's experts, let's have a podcast and discuss it. When you see that the people don't want to have the long conversations about it, then it sort of shows that they might be naive or that they're trying to hide something. And I
mm,
think in the case of the desal plant, it's like if I've looked into how much is invested, and it's PHP,
mhm.
and yeah, it's other things, but
That seems to
yeah,
be that seems to be what's happening in terms of like you said with money. It seems to be that there are people that have vested interests in certain things continuing and they're not necessarily concerned about the other things. They'll lobby that against the government, and then the government who supposedly has the power doesn't seem to have any power because the money, the funding, all of these things that come through them is dictated by the ones that are set to gain from a lot of these things. And you're right. Authentically, it feels like I cannot sit by without giving airtime to this because we've just had our first son, our little one, and it really makes me think about the world that he's growing up in and what I'm hoping to teach him about critically thinking about a lot of these things, critically looking into situations, trying to find the truth and trying to speak authentically, allow a lot of conversations. And the world that he's living in seems a bit it seems scary, and I'm hearing a lot of young people say they don't want to bring kids into this world because it seems so scary and things. But
yeah, yeah. So no, joy is such an important thing, and that's the other thing. Why I fight for the bees and the ocean because I get so much joy out of them. I get my joy out of watching nature, and then that makes you fight for it. But I absolutely agree with you that you don't want to be getting this fear into kids.
mm,
Something I'm noticing, and like I've only got one child. I lost my partner when my child was six,
oh wow,
Oscar. So, but like now, I've heard Elon Musk say it and other things like the best revolution now is having children,
mm,
and for there's women I know my own age that haven't had children yet. I feel they chose careers, they're trying to have children now,
mm,
and it's just like I don't think there's anything more rewarding that you're ever going to have than having young children around as a grandparent.
yeah.
And I feel like whether it was a psyop or not, a lot of people were told that wasn't the right way to go for the environment or for whatever. I think that's a total psyop and our whole meaning of life.
Mm.
is connected to, like, in the same way you look at the bees, they're not working for themselves. They're always working for the next generation because they love the potential of that next generation and what it has. And yeah, I do think that we should have that or regain that. And this guilt about having children just, has to go. And yeah, I know there was a bit of a fashion there where a lot of the girls that I'd worked with on Save the Bees all had children around, 22, 23. And I think they've made the right decisions in doing that.
Yeah, it's something really special for a woman to be able to do, bring in life into this world, and seeing the miracle, I guess, of having a child as well really helps you appreciate what life is and the special miracle that it is, and also being able to then go and look through their eyes as they learn the world as well and see what they're finding fascinating because we're so caught up in this busy world of fast moving things that we don't tend to slow down and get that joy out of nature and just wonderment and curiosity is a big one as well that trying to foster in my son and in myself. But um, if you had to if you had to sort of think forward a little bit then, Simon, for yourself and your project, what's your main goals apart from obviously bringing awareness to these topics and things like this? What are some of the things that are really top of mind for you at the moment moving forward?
I'm fortunate that I've had victories before, and the victories didn't necessarily take money. They just took a great movement, like boycotting was a
Hmm.
really good one. So there have been several product recalls I've been involved with. One was a product called Confidor, a pesticide.
Hmm.
Another one was a honey that was called a Lowry, got product recalled. And then at the moment, obviously the poisoning program in
Hmm.
Queensland, I think that could be a critical mass. I've got to talk to Jesse more. We've both been sort of tackling other things, but the big difference between that program and our success is we've had zero budget. There was another group who sort of I handed it over to, and they've just been tied up in legal cases. Whereas my vision for that project is to try to raise money to have a decent amount to take them on. They've got $10 million to invest in marketing. If
Hmm.
we even had 100,000 to invest in marketing, I would do an influencer program to try to, get that message out there. In saying that, it's been amazingly successful what we've been able to do already on social media,
Yeah.
numbers wise, and
Hmm.
signatures wise. So you've got that. Whether it's delusional or not, I'm still carrying on that philosophy that like people will buy off people directly, like on the Honey Map.
Hmm.
And yeah, there's a girl that does work for me occasionally here. I've noticed, like on the weekend, she made a Leatherwood honey blend of her product, and she sold out in 2 days. And
Brilliant.
that might be $7,000 you made in 2 days. And so we get sort of caught up in this trap where we think there's no way of actually being able to do our own things because we're trapped in this matrix. But
Hmm.
in some ways, we've got more opportunity than ever because we can build our own audiences and sell to them directly and bypass the supermarket. So
Hmm.
that's one thing,
Yeah,
I've done.
I feel you on that one because I talk a lot about I guess trying to move away from conventional farming techniques where it's a chemical extractive approach. You know, they're throwing more and more pesticides, insecticides on it. They're having to use more fertilizer every single year, and there's more pest pressure every single year, and then the soils are being depleted every single year. So I try and push for obviously regenerative farming. The farmers themselves aren't being helped out at all in terms of trying to help them have that bit of financial backing to make the switch over to regenerative. But something that I come up against a lot in terms of the arguments is they say, it's all good switching to this approach. It's all good having, growing your own food and things like this, but that's not going to feed everyone. And I'm in the camp of thinking if we sort of decentralize everything, bring it back to a local scale where we've got these smaller conglomerates of people that are sharing skills, sharing resources, and sharing produce. It's got a smaller supply chain. It's more locally connected. We've got that community feel. What are your views in terms of that, thinking about how we fix that problem of food growing for the masses and trying to avoid these widespread uses of chemicals and things like that? Do you have any thoughts on that for me, mate?
Yeah, so this is where a bit of note, because I'm assuming you live where you've got a bit of land, you can grow some food. You're not like
I've only got 600 square meters in suburbia. I mean, it's
oh
better than
yeah,
a lot of people, but I'm sort of I'd love to have some more land. I would
no,
absolutely
no,
love
but
it.
that's
So,
enough. That's plenty. And like I know with bees, it's like you don't need barely any room at all.
mm,
You could easily have, half a dozen hives in that area that you're
cool.
at.
Yeah, cool.
So I have a bit of a biased perspective of knowing how easy it is,
Hmm.
because you could literally survive off the beehive. You could like eat the larvae, eat the honey, eat the pollen,
True.
and then you don't need anything else. It's probably a complete food. So I can see even in suburban areas how that bartering system can work.
Mm.
And then I don't know. I guess one battle is the laziness in general of people, because the convenience that now, like, and like I've got a 15-year-old son, he's like getting Uber Eats the whole time. And so maybe there's a mechanism in utilizing technologies to help us with that, where they can deliver your organic honey or organic food for you into the future, rather than just your Uber Eats.
Yeah, well, Uber Eats should be able to go to local farm stalls and things like this as well, pick up orders. I'm sure that that could be integrated somehow.
So there will be solutions out there, and I guess one way of me affecting that is by telling people what to avoid, and
Mm.
that gives the open room up for the good stuff. But yeah, I don't know if you caught it during this year of like explaining to everyone there's Varroa's recently hit, so the last of Australia's pure honey is going to be, dwindling down. A lot
Hmm.
of big commercial beekeepers are getting out of it. There's a lot of people who are misusing chemicals. And so, if you want antibiotic-free honey, you should be buying bulk honey direct.
Yeah.
And honey's probably an easy product for that, because it never goes off. But I know like people are doing it now. I had a friend the other day, and they had olive oil direct from the farmer, and so I think yeah, it's that is definitely the antidote.
Mm.
But yeah, look at I realise I can't preach to the people who don't want to receive that information. And,
Mm.
I don't think Woolworths and Coles are going to be that concerned about what we're chatting about now, or the effect that we're having.
Mm.
Uh, Although, yeah, they have probably done a few legal things against me as well over the years.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, we can make a difference, and yeah, that's a beautiful solution, is small scale localized farming.
Yeah, that's it. And as you just said, voting with your feet, basically. So, if a restaurant is not very good, people just don't go, right? So,
Mm.
in the same way that now we're seeing more of these farmers opening up their delivery systems for, a lot of the meat and things like this. I try and really be conscious about the food that I'm buying, where it's from, and trying to buy direct from the farmers. And that means that I haven't been to Woolworths or Coles or anything like this for I don't even know how long. And I think that it's, yes, occasionally I have to pre-think about, okay, what am I going to have? And I can't just order it straight off online. But that way of living, once we get back to that, the old sort of traditional style of living that we've all forgotten how to do, where we're making our own food, preserving, we're cooking our own homegrown produce, making those decisions and having that. I get to know my butcher, I get to know the farmer, and then you've got this community feel that gets built up. You build these connections, and then you're actually thriving in more ways than one.
Yeah, so yeah, that's a definite. And I'm
Yeah.
lucky where I live. I'm sort of in a holiday town type area, so we all know each other at the local shops,
Yeah,
and
beautiful.
I've got my honey, all on their tables there. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's the last thing I wanted to touch on, mate, with you is if someone wants to get in touch with you or honey or some of the bees that you have on offer and things like this when you catch a swarm or something like that, where's the best place for people to go for some of these resources?
like Instagram's the best way for people to, ask me anything. So I get quite a few direct messages that way. And then, yeah, the bulk honey, I'd advise everyone to start getting their honey in that way. And I can sell you a bucket with a tap, so it's easy to decant in jars. You could then on sell it if you wanted to everyone in your street,
Yeah.
and yeah, that's a great way to do things. But yeah, that's how you contact me. In terms of the petitions, there's obviously the fire ant one we're really pushing at the moment.
Yeah, I'll reshare that link in the
Well,
comments as well.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
will. I'm in the process of trying out to do it, but I think we have to do some type of crowdfunding for that one. Like I've got 100,000 people following the page.
Mm,
We all cave in $10 each, then we
we're
would be a
off.
force. One of the things that ABC keep pushing is that we're a real minority, and that most people are really for the poisoning,
No,
which
they're not.
it's not small. It's massive that people are against the mandated poisoning. So.
Yeah, I've gotten so many messages after just releasing the episode with Jesse, even just people just saying, "Hey, I really back this," but they not necessarily
Well,
on
yeah, well,
sharing, but like,
Jordan, we'll keep talking, and someone else listening might help. But I'm in Victoria. I'm obviously taking on a few different things. I
mhm.
need people to help orchestrate this one. And so, even if I know when I've seen people work for Greenpeace and stuff, like you keep 10% of the money you raise. I
Mhm.
think a system like that. And the other thing I was saying to Jesse is putting money boxes out on, with Stop the Toxic Fire Ant program around different stores, all in the areas that they're poisoning.
Mhm.
And then even just having the box there would be getting out that message and then raising the funds on the back of that. But that's
Yeah.
one of the things you want to do a good job with a program. And I actually feel a little bit bad that I haven't pushed that side of things, but I just haven't had the
You're a
right
busy man.
team. And I don't, there is a responsibility when you start taking money. We like what was interesting is we did raise, I helped raise, 8 grand or 9 grand when it first jumped onto the project. And
Yeah.
we did testing of Sanford River for poison, and it was it had so much poison in it. It was just like devastating.
Mm.
And we were just really lucky we found a scientist that wasn't government aligned. And he actually got, I don't know if you call in trouble, reprimanded. Like, how did you get the test results without going through us?
Yeah.
And but anyway, there's the Sanford River, which has got lungfish in it that is World Heritage, protected, was full of this poison that kills fish. So um, anyway, that's going back over old ground. But yeah, we can talk off air if you might have a little bit of a team that you know can get that happen. We don't happening, and I'm going to obviously be talking to Jessie a bit to see if she can push it as well. But yeah, let's
That's it.
aim for $1 million.
That's it, mate. It's as I said earlier, one person at a time. I think like every conversation that I have, I'm trying to bring awareness to these things. I've got in the local butcher that I mentioned earlier, they've got all of these posters up everywhere about the poisoning and things like that. They're sharing. There's local cinemas that are sharing about the water pollution and a beautiful movie that's just been made recently. And there are more and more people seeing sort of starting to be aware of this, and it's very hopeful when I chat to people like yourself and other people like Jesse who are just as keen to make a difference. And the more and more people we wake up to this, the better it's going to be for all of us and our future and for our children. So, just on air to wrap up, I want to thank you a lot for the hard work that you do, putting your neck on the line, not only for the bees, but for so many other important issues in our environment, in our country. So, um, I'd take a lot of inspiration from you, and I would love everyone else to do the same. So appreciate you, Simon. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time out to chat to me. And yeah, we'll continue writing to each other, I'm sure. And yeah, I'll keep you up to date if there's any major help I need. Thanks.
Perfect, perfect. And there we have it, ladies and gentlemen, an important, important conversation, and more conversations like this need to be happening. Now, we spoke about some, well, as we say, not controversial things in our mind, but seemingly controversial out to the public. But having more and more of these chats is going to make sure that actually we see through some of the propaganda that's used to talk about certain issues and help us realize and recognize, wake up to the fact that there are people with vested interest behind some of these things, and there's a lot of money behind some of these things that dictates what may happen more so than our voices, our community, our environmental impact, things like this. So what can we do? We can talk about it. We can share this. We can share this episode. If you resonated with this episode, please share it around. There'll be some clips on social media that you can share. Reach out to Simon, let him know of any stories, sign the petition in the comments below, and let's get a few more voices rolling on these issues. So if this is all I can do by sharing and talking about it and just having open conversations, I'm not on anyone's side, no matter what. I'm just on the side of nature and trying to, bring us back to the beautiful world that we want to see in our future. So if you enjoyed the episode, leave a review, a comment, some thoughtful stars, and I'm very excited again to see you next week. So we'll wrap up the rest of this year very, very soon. We'll see you soon. Thanks for listening, and bye for now.